Hello, my name is Jess Dance and I'm a museum professional and artist who mostly creates work that focuses on neurodivergent experiences. I've been involved in the British Art Network's Emerging Curators group, and as part of this I've had the opportunity to research an area of British art. The Emerging Curators group is a supportive forum for the next generation of curators in the UK, enabling peers to come together and share experiences and thinking around creating British art. I've interviewed 5 artists about their creative practice and if neurodiversity should be considered an art movement similar to the disability art movement. Can you tell us your name and about your creative practice?
Okay, my name's Robin Bale and I'm a live or performance artist, depending on which definition you like. And I make improvised spoken word, noise and music work. Although obviously for the last year and a bit, I haven't done a lot live at all. If anything, I've done 1 or 2 things on Zoom because, things haven't been happening. So I make, improvised music and noise spoken word work. One of the main reasons why I approach things in an improvised way is because I realized on my MA, so 12 years ago or something, I realized I was setting myself up to fail, thinking that I had to do things in a scripted manner. And then obviously I'd get to the last minute and I wouldn't have written the script. And so, well, on some level, I thought, well, I'll try winging it. And it sort of developed into a praxis. But that is due to the fact that, I'm not really that capable of planning or organizing, which is a bit silly because I actually started off studying, which does require a fair bit of planning and organizing if you want to make physical objects and make them stand up and everything.
Maybe that's a different type of organising, sculpture to live performance.
Yes, it is. It totally is. There's preparation beforehand. On my BA, which is many, many years ago now, before I was actually diagnosed as dyspraxic, and just last year, I was lucky enough, after jumping through a lot of hoops, to get a diagnosis of ADHD. But obviously, I've been both dyspraxic and ADHD all my life. But on my BA, I became very preoccupied with why things should stand up and playing around with things that were off balance, out of balance, things that were merely propped together or tied in a really inept way. And I realize now all that was actually also a response to the way I related to the world, by necessity, really.
Could you tell us about some of your work that focuses on neurodiversity?
As I just said, I believe it all actually does in terms of, well, let's take a recorded piece, which was for London Art Development Agency. And it was a commission, and true to form, I got the commission in literally on the day it was meant to be installed in the space. So it wasn't installed in the space, it's available online. It's a sound piece that, had its own problems in the sense, again, of organizing and so on. But it was concentrating on the idea of the untimely. One of the things I find as well as I am, is that at least I always feel I'm late. I'm always falling behind. This piece was a response to a project which was about archiving a performance art festival in Clerkenwell from the mid-1980s. And rather than going the hagiographic route, which is what it was essentially set up to do, so a celebration of how radical and brilliant 1980s performance art was, I took another route, which was about what the archive does, for me, for everyone, is to put us in the position of latecomers. So the whole piece was playing around with this idea of, which you can do in sound quite well through formal methodologies such as using echo, reverb, obviously playing things backwards or forwards or whatever too fast. So I played very much with the arriving late when it's all already happened, using various formal mechanisms to emphasize this. That's available on the Live Art Development Agency website, the project thing called Edge of an Era. But my piece was called Yet I Came After. So there was a mantra running through it, which was, I was there, yet I came after. I wasn't there, yet I came after. Which to me is a direct response, not only to how, like I said, history is commodified. The 80s didn't exist. I mean, I was alive back then. I was even living in the area. But the 80s didn't exist as the 1980s. That's a back formation. But that's also the nature of being, well, at least for me, dyspraxic ADHD is this feeling of, yeah, you're not quite in step with the times. Of course, it's another question as to who exactly gets to dictate what the step is, what the tempo is, and whose times they are, which was also something I responded to in the piece. I also just recently did a direct response to my neurodivergent conditions for resonance radio, where I took a large amount. I always generate, of course, a hell of a lot of starts of things, that a lot of which never get finished, which goes with the territory, of course. And so I took all the half-made pieces on my PC and turned them into an hour-long radio program. And rather than trying to make them flow together, create some sort of seamless whole, I actually quite deliberately just played with disjunctions, jarring all the rest of it. Plus there was elements of spoken word again, talking about not getting things done, feeling out of step, out of place, somewhere behind. And I suppose, well, lastly, a number of pieces I made, which were improvised spoken word, I called rehearsal, where I pointed out to the audience that I was not there and neither were they, because the real thing hasn't happened yet. It was simply a run through. I mean, if you rehearse something, what rehearse means is running over the same ground again, doing it over again. So it's a repetition, which sort of implies that the actual performance is a one-off, which is not true, not possible. I mean, there was another layer to that, which of course, which is that I don't rehearse because I'm not organized enough to. So yeah, those three things, I suppose, that, yeah, directly address neurodivergency.
My research suggests that there are more artists creating work about neurodivergent experiences in recent years. Why do you think this might be?
I think at least part of that is very little to do with art or artists so much as the education system and where funding's gone. The increased numbers of people who've been going to university, art school and so on, and have understandably, well, it happened to me, run into difficulties for one reason or another, quite apart from the finances, which are outrageous, but run into difficulties and have been diagnosed. So there seems to be a lot of neurodivergent people around now, but there always has been. And I actually Cool. Yeah, so dyspraxia back in the early 90s wasn't a thing. There was a lot of dyslexics. And dyslexics, I was told, well, actually, neurodivergent people generally, apparently, you're most likely to find them in art college a lot, in prisons, or in the, there's, yeah, a certain sort of tendency to want to go to, I suppose, either relatively unrestricted sort of places like art school, or to feel fairly at home maybe in the army. And, well, I know from my own experience, finding it difficult to avoid prison for one reason or another. Again, depending on class and all sorts of other things. But there's a lot of neurodivergent artists because there always has been. It's just that the diagnosis industry, let's say, has taken off in tandem possibly with the increase of people attending university and at least some state schools taking the whole business of certificating students seriously. Although I know that not all state schools do. As for work about neurodivergency, I'm not sure I even know what that means. I'm not sure what that would mean. But that's at least partly because I'm not entirely certain what making work about something necessarily means. So yeah, it's a lot more visible. It's a lot more visible now. But as I think I said in your initial survey that you sent out, I'm not sure what that means, and I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing or not. It's a thing. it's happened for a variety of reasons. But yeah, I don't know why people are making work about it. I don't even know. Well, actually, I say that, and I've got and described, of course, how I've made work about it, but I would say more through it.
Over 2/3 of the respondents to my survey said that they felt there should be or already is a neurodivergent art movement. What are your thoughts on this?
Again, I don't genuinely know what that would mean in practice. A cynical part of me makes me think it's partly to do with where funding's going, where funding is, to be quite honest. So there's, a neurodivergent arts movement might well be able to corner funding from councils, arts council, whatever, more easily than non-neurodivergent arts movement might. There's that. But I don't know quite. It comes down to the thing like, how would you express it? I mean, a neurodivergent arts movement, what would that actually mean in practice? If it meant more latitude for meeting deadlines and a greater acceptance, which there currently is, of people, for instance, doing applications by video or audio file or whatever, that's all great. But again, is that an arts movement? I mean, greater accessibility, which is still a problem, frankly, is by no means a bad thing. But what would neurodivergent arts look like? So yeah, there's obviously a lot of neurodivergent artists. There always has been. Always has been. There just hasn't always been the mechanisms for diagnosis and so on.
What impact, if any, do you think having a named neurodivergent art movement would have on your work and how your work is described?
Described by who, I suppose, is the first question, isn't it? I mean, curators and critics, I suppose. So yeah, that would make that. Would it make a difference? You see, this is the thing. I don't rightly know. I mean, to me, my feelings of untimeliness, of being generally out of step and rather awkward in the physical world, and generally being unable to get almost anything together in terms of organising and so on, is obviously peculiar to my neurodivergency. At the same time, I feel that we live in a society that's way too punitive and has actually made people such as ourselves suffer quite seriously. I was at school with a whole load of kids who almost certainly were dyslexic, dyspraxic, or whatever. But through the general iniquities of class and race, and to some extent gender, a lot of them never stood a chance of getting to art school or anything else. I mean, that's just a fact. So, but that goes for non-neurodivergent people who happen to be the wrong class, race, or gender. It's a societal thing that extends far beyond. I mean, if a more neurodivergent society might generally be better for everyone, almost certainly. And it, not constant competition, deadlines, people cracking the whip on you and all the time and all the rest of it, might well be better for everyone. How would it be understood in relation to, say, non-neurodivergent art? That might be a good question as well. What is non-neurodivergent art? What does it look like? Because I don't know. I know what non-neurodivergent people look like and act like. Art is something else. So yeah, it's two separate things, I would say.
What one change would have the biggest impact on neurodivergent artists?
And it's the same that would have a big impact on everybody. A decent welfare state, an end to tuition fees, obviously, council house building. So what would improve life for neurodivergent people would more or less be the same that would improve life for everybody, I think. Now, making a demand for that, it's a good thing that, you can now apply for things by video and so on. Access, sort of like enabling access, has improved over the years, large type forms, all the rest of it. This is all great. I think more of that, but Yeah, I don't. Beyond that, I do not know. Apart from, universal basic income, let's say, that'd improve life for everybody, including neurodivergent people who might not want to feel forced onto the treadmill. So yeah, just taking the pressure off one way or another is what would make a difference. And if one could do that for everyone under the banner of neurodivergency, I don't know. I would say that to be neurodivergent is to decidedly be at odds with the society that as it's currently constituted. Of course, that goes for a hell of a lot of people who aren't neurodivergent as well. But to be neurodivergent is, well, I mean, I can't, because I've only ever been me, but I would say is in a particularly intimate and strange way to be at odds with society.